I used to work in retail, and some nights I'd be the one to close the store. That meant I wouldn't get home until around 10:30 p.m. Now, this didn't just happen once. It happened a few times. I'd step out of my car and start walking to the front door, and that's when I'd hear it. My wife's voice. She'd call out just one word, "Babe." It sounded exactly like her. Same warm tone, not excited or scared, just normal, like she was calling me from the side of the house. It came from between our house and the neighboring house. At the time, no one was living there. I never walked toward the sound. I just kind of tilt my head, tried to peek around the corner to see if I could catch something, but I never did. Eventually, I just go inside and find my wife already asleep. I brought it up to her the next day, told her what I'd been hearing. She looked surprised, but neither of us really knew what to make of it. Then things got weirder. Lately, I've been waking up in the middle of the night because I hear that same voice, my wife's, saying, "Babe," just like before. I open my eyes, look around the room, and she's right next to me, sound asleep. But the voice is still so real, it makes me sit straight up in bed. And it's not just me. My wife had her own strange experience. One day, it was just her at home. She was in the living room, cleaning, when she suddenly felt someone standing behind her. She figured I had just gotten home early, so she didn't turn around right away. But then, out of nowhere, she heard this loud, deep growl right in her left ear. When she spun around, there was no one there. No door had opened. No one else was home. And it doesn't end there. We had a family staying over for a while. My wife's aunt and her 3-year-old son. One night, the little boy needed to use the bathroom, so his mom walked with him. While they were in there, she heard a man's voice calling from just outside the bathroom window. He kept repeating, "Hey kid, hey kid, kid." She rushed to the window, looked outside, but no one was there. Here's the thing, the house next door used to belong to an older man in his 70s, and his son maybe in his late 30s. The father passed away in that house, and not long after, the son moved out. The house sat empty for a while, and though the son would drop by occasionally to check on it, it mostly stayed dark. Eventually, a new family moved in, but they didn't stay long. Less than a year later, a for sale sign went back up. Makes you wonder, right? Did they hear the same voice? Feel the same presence? Or did something drive them away? Here is the story. So me and my family moved into a new house back in 2014. I was in first grade of elementary school. It started with the first night I was sleeping there. I was hearing walking in my room and knocking on the furniture. It was always the same number of steps and sounds, and it was weird. It continued for a few years before new things started happening. The truth is, I was always interested in the paranormal. First things that started happening were voices, sounds, and even objects moving. I don't really remember the order of the events, so I will try to explain the best I can. There were the usual things happening, doors closing and opening, banging and knocking on the walls, footsteps in the hallways, voices, things found in different places, and so on. My family never believed me until it started happening to them. One night, I was getting ready for bed, and my mom and dad were in the living room, and they both heard me calling them. I wasn't. And when they walked towards me and asked me what I needed, I was confused because I didn't say anything. Another time, I wasn't home that day, but my parents were in their room. and my mom told my dad to turn off the TV. My dad went to the living room, and the TV wasn't on. They heard a man and a woman voice arguing. As my dad returned, he said that he turned the TV off. After a bit, it was heard again, and he went to check, and yet again, the TV was turned off. It happened one more time until my dad told my mom that the TV was never turned on in the first place. Another time, I remember hearing walking in the hallway so many times, but it always sounded like the person wasn't wearing any shoes, and every time I heard someone talking, I never understood what they were saying. It just sounded like nothing I've ever heard before, and they were always whispering. A different time, I had a lot of cats, and once we all noticed that the cats didn't want to go in my room, and they were hissing and growling as they looked under the bed, but there was nothing. I even tried to put the cat closer, but it just ran out in a panic. There was one room that nobody lived in, and from there we heard lots of sounds. I remember waking up in the middle of the night just staring at the wall, and I heard gentle knocking on the wall a few times until the banging was heard. It was incredibly loud, and once me and my mom were at home alone, and we heard nails scratching on the wall from that room. I would always go inside to check, but there was nothing. Even my uncle witnessed some things when he came to visit us. He heard some of us calling him, but when he went to check, that person was asleep. And one night, he saw the front door shaking, but when he called us, it was like nothing ever happened. But in the end, it was always like something wanted to get us to my room, and the room next to mine. I remember waking up with scratches on my arm, even if I would sleep with no animals, and I remember feeling someone touching my arms and shoulders. We ended up moving out from that house, and we went to a new apartment, but it still didn't stop happening. I remember filming my dog with a camera that broke not long after, but he was playing with someone in the living room, but there wasn't anyone. Now we live in a travel trailer, and all the things seem to have finally stopped happening. Until a few days ago, one night I was watching TV, and the lighter on the table suddenly started moving by itself. That night I had a weird feeling of being watched, and even after a few days had passed, I still can't stop thinking about it and everything that had happened. I just have a weird feeling. I decided to share our story, hoping that someone would be able to explain what is happening. The thing is, it started happening to my dad even when I was a baby. He would hear breathing in the room with him. He thought it was just me, but he forgot that I was with my grandparents. And when I was in kindergarten, I woke up one night because I felt something grabbing my leg, and there was nothing. There were so much more things that happened, but it's really hard to remember all of them. When I was about 5 years old, I lived in Mexico with my family. Just me and my middle sister, who was 6 at the time. We stayed with my aunt and 2 older cousins. Even though they were a bit older, we were all close, like siblings. One of my cousins, the oldest, had a fascination with the paranormal. I never knew exactly where it came from, but he was obsessed with magic, scary stories, and anything that had a mysterious or eerie edge. Even though I was small, I still remember one day that felt like an eternity, etched into my memory like a scar. It must have been a weekend in October. We didn't have school the next day, and our aunt was working late, as usual. Some neighborhood kids came over. There were 6 or 7 of us in total. That night, my older cousin decided it was a perfect time to try a game he had heard about at school. A game meant to contact the other side. He had us write the letters A through Z on small pieces of white paper and do the same with the numbers 1 through 10. We spread the letters across the top half of the large square table in our living room and lined the numbers along the bottom. On one side of the table, we placed a piece of paper that said yes, and on the other, no. Then he went digging through the kitchen until he found what he called the key, a glass cup. That's what we used to communicate. The mood in the room shifted. We were just kids, but even then, we could feel the weight in the air. The laughter faded. Some of us were curious, some clueless, and others, like me, were starting to feel real fear. My cousin gave us strict instructions. No matter what happens, don't take your fingers off the glass, and don't leave without saying goodbye. It was already dark outside, but in our neighborhood, people still sat outside late at night, laughing and talking, so it didn't feel scary, at least not out there. Inside, though, it was another story. We all placed a finger on the upside-down glass. The first questions were silly. Someone asked who had been the worst behaved. The glass didn't move, but everyone pointed at me and laughed. That moment of laughter would be the last. Then came the real questions. Is there someone here? No response. Is there someone here that wants to play with us? Stillness. Then, one more time. Is there someone here with us? The glass moved. I gasped for air. My cousin's face turned pale. We all stared at each other, each of us wearing the same look of dread. I wanted to cry, but I remember the rule. Don't take your finger off the glass. So we kept going. Are you a child? The glass moved slowly, forming circles. Once, twice, a third time, then slid firmly to no. The air grew colder. The room felt heavy. I let out a scream, but somehow still kept my fingers on the glass. Then someone asked, "Are you going to harm us?" The glass didn't move in circles this time. It began to shake. Violently. That's when I lost it. My fear took over, and I pulled my finger away. The shift was immediate. Everyone froze and looked at me in panic. My cousin's voice cracked as he said, "I'm closing the game." He moved the glass and said goodbye. Everyone else followed. The game was over. I got in trouble. But no one realized that what happened next would haunt us for years. After everyone left, I felt hollow. I couldn't tell if the fear had faded or if it had just settled deeper into me. I was exhausted. My sister scolded me for ruining the fun, but I didn't have the words to explain what I felt. That night, something changed. That's when it began. There was a shadow by our bed, dark, tall, heavy. I couldn't see its face, but I heard it whispering. The words were cold, angry, and I didn't just hear them, I felt them. They crawled into my chest. Stand up. Come to the living room. My body felt heavy, my head foggy, but it pulled me. Somehow I walked. I found myself back in the living room, in front of the table. The shadow turned me toward an old antique drawer. Open it. My hands moved on their own. Inside was a small blade. I picked it up like I already knew what it was for. Then the voice called me back to the bedroom. Come, do it. Hands, finger, and then a scream. Everyone in the house woke up to find me standing by my sister, holding the blade. Her finger was bleeding. I was crying. She was crying. My cousin looked completely shaken. Moments later, my aunt came home from work to chaos. She didn't yell like we expected. That was strange. Normally, she'd be shouting, but this time, she didn't say much. She cleaned us up, got us into bed, and said nothing more. It wasn't until years later that she told us why. That night, just before she walked into the house, she saw something at the edge of the property. A black dog, larger than any dog she had ever seen, and its eyes red, glowing. It just stood there, staring at the house. That's when she knew. When you seek the paranormal, it doesn't just come to play, It comes to stay. Have a paranormal experience of your own? Share it with us at OfficialPhantom.mic@gmail.com. Whether in text or voice recording, we want to hear your story. Thank you for tuning in to Phantom Mic, and remember, if you still feel alone, you weren't listening closely enough.